Blessings and abundance to each and every one of us gathered here at Circle of Iniquities event today. A special and warm greeting is being extended to each and every one of you on the Storytellers panel. My name is Isa Kamal, and this tune that we're going to do today is full of classic, full of timeless melodies, and I hope that it empowers us as we seek to come together, unite, and really empower ourselves during a time like this. Blessings to all of Hurry up and come back was the last thing she said to her son. The day his life was taken, she didn't know he wouldn't come back. He died from the bullet of a gun. Now her little boy is gone. She said, help me, Jah, help me. And she looked up to the sky, and she heard a voice reply, when you cry, I cry, I cry along with you. When you smile, I smile, I smile along with you. I smile along with you. Another baby left homeless, abandoned when he was two, stripped of the home and the life he had and the family he knew. It isn't easy being homeless, especially when it wasn't you who decided to leave your mom and dad. No, that choice was made for you. Why is there just so much trouble in the world? Why is there just so much trouble in the world? Yes, there's just so much trouble in the world. Woo! So much trouble in the world. What is the future of you? And where will we all learn to take off? Where is the love that we must all embrace? I do believe it's here. Yes, you got to be strong and do the best you can. Light is out there, conquer your fear, but don't you wait too long. Yes, you got to be strong and do the best you can. When you cry, I cry alone. smile, I smile, I smile along with you. I smile along with you. I smile along with you. I cry along with
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Isa Kamal, for that amazing, amazing performance. Thank you, everyone, for coming to day 2 of our Black History Month, a Diaspora of Blackness, a celebration of Blackness around the world. I'm so excited to get this Storytellers panel up and running. We have some incredible, incredible guests today. So let's just bring them all out. Hey, everybody.
Hi.
How's everyone doing today?
Doing well. Doing good.
Awesome.
Doing good.
I love to hear it. Okay, so I'm just gonna jump right into it. So, what made you get into the art of storytelling?
I'll start. I don't know if I consciously got into it. I think, as a kid, being imaginative was highly supported and encouraged. Being expressive, being creative and artistic, and I grew up with the concept that everyone has a story to tell, and everyone is living their story. So I think it just kind of wove itself into like my propensity for performing arts at first, and then other things, literature and stuff like that as well. Yeah, I just think everyone has a story to tell, and everyone is living their story. So that is a way of telling it.
Absolutely. Anyone else?
Hi, everyone. I know for me, it was about through the dating process, through a dating process. Because what I do, I did not go to school for. I always tell people that God guided me to this journey. But it was definitely through a dating experience that I got tired of hearing, oh, she's so pretty for a dark skinned girl, and your hair and your skin complexion. And I just felt like at that point, which was 2013, I said, I need to tell this story. It was, it was horrible that I kept hearing that phrase through growing up, through females, through lighter skinned women, through darker skinned men. And I just said, you know what? Thank you so much. This date has ended, and I'm telling the story. Yeah, I'm telling. I will in Brooklyn at the Promenade in Brooklyn. I promise you all, it was a hot chocolate date, and he just kept saying that. Oh, you're so nice. You're not angry like my baby mama. Not your baby mama. And how are you associating us to be the same? And he was like, well, she's your complexion and she's angry all the time. I said, well, make me more angry, And so then I said, you know what? Thank you so much, because I've been wanting to tell this story, and you just given me the real reason why I should tell the story, and I did. So I thank him, in the universe.
Anyone else? You have a purpose into what caused you to enter the art of storytelling, or?
Shall we round robin it?
Yeah, don't be shy. Just whatever you feel, just jump in and say it. If you cut someone off, it happens.
Okay, let's do a popcorn. I'll do my little 1 minute spiel and I'll pop it out to someone else. Okay. So my art, I think, is a mix of a few resources. When I was a child, my mom, the first part of my childhood, my mom was in law school, so she was incredibly busy. She was working full time and she was raising me. And so the way that she would buy study time is by giving me every Disney movie musical ever made. And so I was able to fall in love with story and musical theater from the comfort of my home. When my mom saw that and was like, she's having a really visceral reaction to storytelling. Narrative means a lot to her. So she bought me a puppet theater and I started making little puppet plays as a child. And I was like, this is so much fun. I can't wait to learn how to read and write so I can make real stories. And I fell in love with reading and narrative in all of its forms. And by the time that I was around, not even 14, I knew it. In fact, when I was 8, I knew I wanted a life in the theater because my mom, probably in deference to Disney for all the study time, took me to go see The Lion King on Broadway. And I was 8 years old, and that was that. I knew theater was what I wanted to do. And that has never changed. Okay, so I'll popcorn to Rodney.
That's so funny. Lion King was the first show I saw too. I was a kid in elementary school here in San Francisco, and I just walked past it this morning too. My elementary school, the whole city, there was a special thing where inner city kids can go and see the touring production of The Lion King. And I was like, well, look at all these little kids on stage, and they look like me. There's a little Simba and everything. And I was a kid who loved musical theater as a kid. I was a dork, and I think that totally inspired me to see myself up there. And I think that's what I really love about stories, is that there's a sense of identity. And I think there wasn't always my identity expressed. I am a openly gay, Black, tall, dark-skinned man, and there are not many stories or narratives that I got to see growing up that I was a part of. And so I like this idea. I have a theater company in San Francisco with my co-founder on here, Marcelo, who I'll popcorn to in a second. But we like to make space. And I think that's why I love telling stories, because I want to make space for more kinds of people. We always hear that trope, we're not monolithic. Yeah. But there are so many different types of, Blackness and brownness and, artistry. And that's why I like to tell stories. All right, Marcelo?
I was really about to start on a whole thing, totally muted. Has to happen at least once. I was really just brought up in performing land. I didn't even know it. I started off as a toddler in a dance troupe that was folk dancing from all over the world. And then from there, I somehow wound up in the circus. I didn't run away to the circus. I was just kind of in the circus from a very young age, and then ran away from it. And then, as a kid, I was put in a musical theater class. And then, from there, here I am almost 2 decades later. So like they say, the life chose me. I didn't choose it, which some days is a curse, but most days is a blessing. So yeah, that's how I got into storytelling. I'm going to throw it to my new friend, Gilda.
Oh, wow. Thank you. And I love your room, Marcelo. Isn't that beautiful? That orange is
Thank you.
Yeah, I love the frame, Well, I guess it's a combination of what everybody said. I was supported. That's for sure. When I was a little girl, I would sit in the closet, a dark closet with a flashlight. I'm a filmmaker, and just and sit there for a long time. And my parents I grew up with my mother and my grandparents would allow me to sit in this dark room with this flashlight. Then I would come out, kind of like staggering out because I was into the zone, And my grandmother would say, "Baby, what were you doing in there?" And I said, "Oh, Grandma, I saw all these images and everything." She said, "What did they say?" So she helped to conjure story in me. She supported me. I was always this eccentric kind of kid, and have always been eccentric, that kind of thing. And I wanted to, so was able to start to tell stories from back then. And then I'm a professor at a university, and I'm a sociologist. And so the way I teach oftentimes is through story. But I also wanted to deal with people and images and issues that sometimes we don't see. James Baldwin has this quote. He says, "To be an artist is like being a lover. If I love you, I need to show you things that you don't see." So, the things that go through our head, the kind of private thoughts that sometimes we have, the images that to break and rupture a frame of what we usually see in the master narrative, and that's what I want to do. And I fell in love with documentary, but I want to go on to do other kind of narrative films. I want to do a docudrama and those kinds of things. So, and I'm an activist. And so oftentimes what we see, we learn history through stories, right? I mean, the camera, and everybody has one now, and people are using it as a story, I mean, we're documenting, we're preserving our history. It's the new griot, So, yeah, I can go on and on. You got to stop me. I took my kids to see The Lion King, by the way. So there you have it.
The linking force is The Lion King.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
And what about you, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a story that's much different than what has already been said. I wasn't a theater kid, though. I wasn't like the kid who was in the community theater production of Annie when I was 8. That's just not who I was. But like Gilda was saying, I had the allowance to dream, and I had the allowance to create. I was, raised by a really strong Black woman who gave her kids those allowances. We had the stacks of VHS tapes of Disney movies. Every Sunday when she was doing hair and doing laundry, she would put on the classic movie channel, and I was exposed to, Hitchcock, Audrey Hepburn, Billy Wilder, Betty Davis, Sidney Poitier, Ruby Dee, from a very young age. I remember watching Psycho when I was 9, and that stuff was implanted in me. Me and my sister used to do puppet shows. We'd get a long table at our grandparents' house, put a tablecloth on it, and go behind the table with the sock puppets and do a show. And I would write this god awful script that I thought was my, August Wilson at the time, and put on a show. And it's because I had that allowance. And then once I kind of got older, what it turned into was that thing of being able to tell my story and being free when telling my story, because I can put my story on the page, and it's much easier than having to go face to face with someone and say, these are my issues and these are my problems and this is what I'm concerned about at the moment. Writing and storytelling gave me the allowance to, explore those feelings and emotions in an artistic way and through the voices of others, and tell others stories and the stories that need to be told. So yeah.
Amazing. So I watched an interview with the film director Lulu Wang, and she talked about how she was fired from a position, and that's when she realized that if she kept just working for other people, she would never get to pursue her art truthfully. So whether it came from failure or success for you, what inspired your breakthrough moment that made you realize, I have to do this, I'm going to create my own work?
For me, I was probably 23, 24. So my background, I was a poet for years, and I was lucky enough that my poetry paid my undergraduate tuition. I was part of this program called First Wave, which still exists at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. And it was this brainchild of all these young people who were like, wow, Brave New Voices, which is a young poetry, a poetry festival for young people. It's so great. What happens when people age out of Brave New Voices at 19? Where do they go? And so these people came together, like, let's give them a full tuition scholarship so they can just be young artists. So we had people who were dancers and singers and poets and b-boys and painters all together working with one another, pardon me. And many of us had backgrounds in the arts. Some of us were really new. But we were also academics. We were expected to perform well academically, in part because we were brown kids with a full tuition scholarship, and to use our art as a vehicle for our academics, research, and change. So while I was at UW-Madison, I became a part of this program, another program called the Ronald E. McNair Program, which essentially helps Black and brown kids get into master's and PhD level programs. And I thought I was going to be a sociologist. I got into UW's sociology program, which was at that time, I don't know about now, one of the best in the country, tied with Princeton and Berkeley, I think. And I thought I was going to do that. And I was like, no, let me go to performance studies. And that way I can be a theorist. That way I can talk about art. And after a year at a theater, dance, and performance studies master's at the University of Maryland, I realized very quickly that I didn't want to talk about other people's art. I wanted to write my own art. I didn't want to read, no offense to any Richard Schechner fans. I was like, I'm so tired of reading Richard Schechner. I really want to go and do this myself. And I literally burst into tears and walked into my advisor's office. And I was like, I think I need to take a leave of absence and move to New York and pursue playwriting. And she was like, okay, if that's what you need to do, go do that. And I took my leave of absence. I got very lucky because the people at the University of Maryland were incredibly supportive. Two of my professors there wrote my letters of rec to get into my MFA programs in playwriting. And I just knew that I had to do it. Like, I was doing well in my master's program. All of my students were doing well. I had high grades. I was being told that I had the intellectual capacity to perform at a high level, and I was doing it. And I was like, I'm still really unhappy. I got to go by. And that's what I did, you know? And it just worked.
A true artist. Yes, indeed.
Well, you know, I think we learn from other people's choices, right? So I have people in my family who are incredible musicians. So my uncle is one of the best singers I've ever heard. And when he was in high school, one of his good friends was like, Ray, you and I both can sing. I think we should go to Chicago. I think we should try to make it. And my uncle was like, nah, I'm going to go to the military, right? I'm going to go to the safe route, right? But that friend turned out to be Philip Bailey of Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Whoa. What?
And my aunt never forgotten it. And I have an aunt on my dad's side who was like, who cut records, who was like a Baltimore house singer. And like, if you go on YouTube and type in her name, you have all these deep tracks. And people are like, well, what happened? She stopped. And I think that, you know, I think she has mixed feelings about that. So I was like, I have to go for it.
Yeah.
I have to, or else I'll always regret it.
I'll go. For me, there have been multiple times where I felt like what I'm doing, maybe I should be doing something different. I wasn't quite sure what that was, though. But definitely in college, I was overly exposed to the arts, to drama and dance. And when I graduated, I came back and I was teaching in high schools. And through modeling and doing background work, there was one particular time on, I don't know if y'all have been on Law and Order, but everyone who's done background work has been on Law and Order. And there was a time where the assistant director had pulled me from a scene, and I have natural big hair. And so they like took off, they were trying to rub out my eyes. Like I said, there's just mascara on, no eyeliner, so you could stop doing that. And then they pulled my hair back, and I was like, what's going on? What is the problem here? And the second AD said, you're a distraction on the camera. And I was like, what does that mean? He was like, well, we're focusing on you instead of who the lead is. And so they can't have that. And from then I knew that I'm not supposed to be a background kind of person. I just felt like whatever I had inside me was shining a lot. So I didn't want to do background anymore. And then through another boyfriend story or male story, an ex-boyfriend of mine knew someone was directing music videos. And he said, you know, my ex, she's really good with paperwork and organized. And he said, maybe you should hire her as assistant director. And I didn't know what that was. So I Googled my best friend, what an assistant director did. And I went on to AD 3 of his music videos. And from there, I learned so much from him. Mark Caransea is his name. I'll never forget anyone who's helped me along my way, my journey. And I said, you know what? After a while, I was assistant directing on short films. And I said, you know what? I don't think I'm supposed to be an assistant director anymore either. Because they kept asking me my input, and it almost felt like I was directing at one point. And I said, you know what? I'm going to start directing films of my own. And that same Hot Chocolate date, I put that in the works and wrote my first short film and got my friends to help me with it. And we filmed it in Long Island. And then a year later, I went to New Orleans and I filmed my first pilot. And I just knew that maybe if I had stayed along the lines of just doing the background work here and there on commercials, getting the checks, I didn't care. I kept saying, you know, if I have to eat cereal every day, I refuse to do background work. I just refuse to do background work and be watered down or try to tame me for who I am. I said I need to shine on my own. And if they would not give me the opportunity, I'm going to create the opportunity. And from then, I've been able to create opportunities for fellow actors and filmmakers, and also first timers, a lot of first timers. And I've always used the youth in my films, and I have them on set so they can learn as well. Because for me, no one in my family does what I do. I don't have any luxury of saying, hey, what was it like when you were this or that? And so for me, I learned through seeing other people. And that's how I've grown in my career, through vision. And I feel like for me as a storyteller, I tell less words. I mean, I write less words, so more of the vision for you to see the visual. So when people do read something, they visualize exactly what it is, because I feel like words are important, but sometimes words are too much.
Well, I can't wait to see your films.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Rodney.
Yeah, that's super dope. I was connecting with all and vibing with all what you were saying. I didn't have anyone in my family who did what I did either. So when I went off to college, it was kind of a scary new thing. So I live next to a fire station and someone's in need. So probably gonna let that go by, but y'all can still hear me. Am I hearing? Am I echoing?
No,
You're fine.
Am I chilling? Sorry, the ambulance was to go by. My bad, y'all.
We're artists. That's background.
Right.
Come on. I mean, we love it.
This is like
ambiance. Do it, brother.
But what inspired me in my moment? I went off to Carnegie Mellon University for college, and there's this thing in the School of Drama called Playground, where we shut down classes for a whole week. And our school is so, it's so stringent and it's like boom, boom. But this week is so free. And we enter things to be in this arts festival. It's an arts festival run by us. No classes, none of that. We get to use every single room in our whole building, the Purnell Center of the Arts, just to use as our own playground, a true playground. And me and my other friend, Aida Pirzada, who now works with our company, Esabaco, she wrote this play about the 1001 Nights, but it was a choreo slam. And she's Black and Pakistani, her parents, that's her background. And I was her other artist, basically a producer with her. I didn't really know it at the time. She was an acting major. I was a musical theater major. And somehow we started to find this symbiotic, relationship of like producing these works that represented our people. And it like people loved it in Playground. It was a smash success, and it was wonderful. But cool, back to school. Her mom was like, "Why don't I enter that into the New York Fringe Festival?" And we was like, look at these two brown kids to go to no Fringe Festival, and we got in. And then I got a Kickstarter going for like what $8,000. We ended up getting like $10,000, and we were like, I was a junior in college. I don't know, I was like 20. Not just barely able to drink and like in New York, and I was like managing artist housing and had a theater for us and like doing all these like things that I didn't understand, and it was forcing me to live in the moment. And I realized I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. I had employment for these brown artists, and we were telling stories that we wanted to tell, and it was curated for and by us. And I was like, oh snap. It was wild. It was wild to like take a step back and look at this. It was written by this person who was my peer, and in those moments, and then Marcella says it. These are the moments that were like, this is why we created our company and why we do what we do. And yeah, I'll never forget those moments. I remember when we were first creating our company, we were writing notes that summer on napkins about how we felt. We still have those napkins. Because it meant so much, we didn't have Google Docs and shit. Stuff. We were just writing stuff down, and yeah, that was what inspired me. It gave me the spark to go and do. Yeah. Who wants to go?
Aviva.
Aviva, yeah.
Aviva.
Aviva.
Yeah, Aviva.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I'm primarily work in music, a musician, and write and compose and play and sing and all that kind of stuff. But I have a theater and a dance background, and a little bit of a poetry background as well. And I'm trying to think, I think early on I recognized that I wanted to make original work. I think I may have been in junior high or high school when I started thinking that I would want to continue to study it in earnest. I definitely remember for a few years, I started out playing the piano when I was 5, and really we just had lessons whatever year my parents could afford that I take them. And I would just keep up with it. But I was obsessed with music theory and would go to the local music store and have my mom buy me these little sheet music sketchbooks and all kinds of weird, nerdy stuff. But I remember in junior high and close to high school that, my parents would ask if there was anything in particular I wanted for my birthday or for Christmas. And I kept saying, I want lessons again. And then in I did get them again. And then in high school, I was like, I want to go back into dance classes, and stop playing basketball because I suck. So yeah, but I do just remember this moment around that time where it was no, I'm really serious about I don't want any gifts. I don't want anything. I just want lessons and to keep studying these crafts. I just want to dance and sing and write all the time and just get better at this stuff. I just want to get better at finding or honing my voice. And I felt that way in English class as well. I had a wonderful English teacher for a couple of years, and she really helped me parse out my writing voice, both through prose and through poetry. And I eventually moved that into my songwriting. I will say I went to a tiny K through 12th school, and I remember over prepping myself for being, quote, a big fish in a small pond as I was preparing to go to college in Chicago. I remember giving myself these weird pep talks listen, just full anonymity, just keep your head down, work on the craft. Nobody's going to notice, just do it and you'll just get better. And what I was missing, what was in my blind spot was just how bright we shine. It actually doesn't matter the quantity of people that are around you. That has nothing to do with your light. And so when I got to college, I had prepared to be so small, and that wasn't the case. And it has nothing to do with being better or worse than anybody else. It's just a matter of like, we aren't born to be small. So if you go to an environment, you know, preparing to live your full life, you will be supported in that somehow. Either we can make that place for us, we find the support that we need and stuff. So I was pleasantly surprised that that I didn't need to practice being small, and that really broke something open in the importance of my storytelling and understanding that we are not born to be oppressed.
Oh, right on. Woo-hoo. That
You are
last
speaking
line.
truth.
I know. And that last line did it, you know. Whoa.
What about you, Gilda?
You know, making a way out of no way. You know, I thought to myself, you know, the first time I saw different groups of people was in film, was in media, was in theater. You know, the first time that, you know, I had other kinds of ideas, I saw it come out in the arts. But some of those ideas and some of those images of people were not like the folks that I met, right? Not every Italian American is in the mafia, right? Not every Black woman is a maid or sapphire. But then I used to watch how these maids and sapphires would act. And I thought, my God, they're such beautiful actors, right? They're just beautiful. But the character, you kept seeing the same one. You know, first time I told a friend of mine, I said, you know, first time I met an Asian person was on TV. And that was not like, you know, Mayumi Tsudakawa. And so I thought, and I got tired of these straw characters. And I thought to myself, let me go back in the closet with my flashlight and create other images and really put my ear to the ground of what was in our world, right? And I used it. I'm very much an activist. You know, I'm a revolutionary artist. What did Tony K. Bombara said, to be a revolutionary artist is to make the revolution irresistible. So I want to make the revolution irresistible. So I want to make pretty films with grit, with cinema verite, you know, those kinds of things. And so I thought to myself, instead of just, I didn't go to school for filmmaking. I went to school to get, you know, in sociology and all that. But sociology is a story. It's a story of society, right? I had my students write a paper. Then I said, okay, now translate your research paper into a vignette, into a short film, into a poem, into something spoken word. First time I saw Crumpin', I put it in my documentary. Because I started working in prisons, and my documentary is what these young men and women are doing phenomenal things in prison, right? So but I wanted to not just be talking head documentary. I wanted to have dance in it. So I rented the steps of the Capitol in Washington State. It's in Olympia, Washington. I rented those, whatever, you know. And I had this brother crumping on those steps to talk about justice and how it's in our bodies and those kinds of things. And you know, so, you know, being an artist, being a filmmaker, being a storyteller saves my life. Because I don't want to put it up to mirror society. Nah, I ain't mirroring society. I'm showing what we can do, right? You know, I mean, I want people to take a little hammer, chisel, mold that society. We transcend society as artists. We don't say, okay, I know it's true. I saw it on TV. I want to say what is possible, right? What is possible? I want to transcend this. I want to do some magical realism because it's all in our heads. You know, we got magical realism in our heads. I mean, you know, Black Lives Matter started with a love poem. A love letter she wrote to the Black community after Michael Brown was killed. She wrote a love letter and said, Black Lives Matter. And so I wanted to write multiple love letters. Now, I do some grit stuff, right? but I want to see the triumph of the human spirit, the possibility of all of us. So
that's incredible.
so Chris, what you doing? How you do it? Are we still popcorning it? Okay.
Yeah, that was great. I think firstly, it's important to note that the parameters are set up against us from the beginning, not only as artists, not only as people of color, but as artists of color. The parameters are set up. The wall is set up as soon as we're born, as soon as we choose that we want a life in this industry, whether that be film or theater or literature, it is set up against us. And the tables that have been laid out for centuries were not built for us to sit at. Even our stories are very often not told by us, our stories, by which I mean a lot of the black and brown faces that you see on TV and film, and a lot of times even theater sometimes, that weren't written, produced, and or directed by us. And so I always knew that if I wanted to do anything creative or artistic or in any field, that I was going to have to do two things: get hammer and nail and build my own table, and also work my ass off. Because, you know, we've all heard that thing of you have to do 2 times more than your peer to show that you're even halfway worth it. So I said, well, if you got to do 2 times to show that you're, you know, halfway worth it, I got to do 10 times to show that not only am I on a level playing field as those who build the tables, but I can transcend those tables and tell stories, honest stories of where I come from and who I grew up around, that will outlive me and inspire the next generation to say, oh, I can tell stories. Because again, I wasn't a theater kid, right? I didn't grow up going to the theater. The high school I went to was 90+% minority. Our theater department was literally in a corner of the school. And I just didn't see a way into that lifestyle. I didn't know at that time, you know, even up to 16, 17 years old, the theater was a career, you know, that I could pursue at that time. And what it took was a few things. One, again, I have to give all credit to my mother, who from a time that I was 2 feet tall was saying, I think you're going to be a writer. I don't know why, but you just give me a vibe. You spend a lot of time on like your school essays. You're really like, you put imagery where it doesn't need to be. I think you're going to be a writer. It's accounted to that, and it's accounted to my high school. One of the few theatrical events that a lot of people showed up to was every Black History Month. We had a night of poetry, music, and dance. And it was always a pretty packed house for those nights. And on a whim, a buddy of mine said, we should write poems, because just why not? We should write poems. And so I said, fine. So I just wrote a poem. I didn't think much of it. He ended up missing the audition. I go into this audition, and it's in the theater classroom, and it's me and all the theater kids who have been tucked away in this corner. And anyone who knows theater kids, like high school theater kids, they are a different species of people. And I just was not used to. And so I walk in, and we all have to audition in front of each other. And so I stand up in front of all these theater people, and I do my poem, and I do this spoken word poem, which I didn't know was spoken word at the time. I just thought it was something, it was just a poem. And I do it, and they applaud. And what that told me wasn't, oh, your poem's good. What that told me is you have permission to tell your story. And not only are people going to listen to it, they're going to appreciate it, and they're going to react and engage with it. And from that point on, you know, it's no feeling like that than writing a story and seeing how it connects to people who don't usually get connected to in the arts. The people, you know, who are living day by day, paycheck by paycheck. We don't see those stories a lot, at least not represented in the popular media. We don't see the story of the single mom who is pawning off every ring that she has so that her kids can have a sandwich, right? We don't talk about the young Black men who are victims of abuse and who are afraid to show their emotions because we've we've set up these walls of what a Black man should be. We don't talk about the people. We talk about the people. We have this thing, say their names, but we do it after people are dead. And what I want to do is I want to tell the stories while they're still alive, right? Let's say these names. Let's tell these stories so that we can prevent these things from happening and prevent black boxes from having to be posted on social media. And that all goes back to that moment of getting permission to tell my story and seeing how others reacted to it. And it's kind of that thing that Rodney was talking about, which was, oh, I'm young and I'm seeing what I can do, just from the ground up. What all of you have been saying. I can plant a seed and watch it grow into something bigger than myself, and include my friends, and include collaborators, and include people who otherwise probably wouldn't be able to get jobs in this industry because they don't have the degree from Juilliard. They don't have 10 years of training under their belt. They come from the block. And those are the best actors I know, are the guys who are playing dice in the hallway. Those are the best performers I've ever met, because they're just natural. And those are the stories I'm telling, or just the stories of the real people. So yeah, I don't know if that answered the question. I just went like, whoo.
That was fabulous.
But yeah.
Everyone is just speaking so much light, so much truth. I'm literally, I have heart eyes right now. Everything you're saying, that everyone is saying. And Chris, you have set up basically 3 of my questions. So now I'm like, which one do I pick? But I think I'm going to go with, in regard to the power. Oh no, there is power in our ability to share our stories. What impact do you want your work to have on your audience and on yourself? Whoever wants to go first.
Repeat your question.
Okay, so the question is, there is power in our ability to share our stories. What impact do you want your work to have on your audience and on yourself?
Quickly, that quote I gave you about James Baldwin, see things that people don't see. That's what I want. I want folks to uncover those social forces that brought this brother or sister to prison, right? That brought this brother and sister to Juilliard. What were the social forces? And even the antagonist, the person who, my film, I asked everybody what is justice? And these cops say, never thought about it. Never thought about justice, right? I want them also to recognize, because it's not just them, it is policing. I want folks to go beyond the character, see the character, but go beyond the character and see what is our role, all of our role in being complicit in our own captivity sometimes. You know what I mean? Not just and they lived happily ever after, and this is our struggle and all that. But what are we doing to either change the narrative in our lives and not look at these 2 white cops, those 2 white cops, this is how policing is. Because I'm a prison abolitionist, and I say defund the police. But you need to understand what I mean by that and why, and the history behind that. What's the subtext of that? And I think we can do it as artists. I know we can do it as artists. We go to the heart, mind, and wherever our soul is, and we find it and we shake it up. Because I'm going to say defund the police, but I'm going to show you, right? So that and not tell you, I say, I'm not trying to change your mind. I'm just trying to put something else on it, right? So that's what it does for me. It helps me to put something else on my mind, right? I did a film in Ghana with the refugees, and me and your mama worked there, Lebanese. Anyway, I know Lebanese mother. I'm Auntie Gilda, really. Anyway, so Lebanese brilliant mother and I at some time would go to this refugee camp in Ghana with Liberian women and children refugees. And at the end of filming there, that film I did, the woman said, you know, Sis Gilda, the same AK-47s that you see in the Civil War in Liberia are on your streets. You need to do something about that. So I worked with the Crips and the Bloods. I went to Miss Gilda, to Auntie Gilda, to Mama G. You know what I mean? And I had to see what I thought about these kids, what it means to clean up a neighborhood so that your kids can go to school and not be lured into a gang. What is how I'm being complicit to this captivity. Okay, I haven't said enough.
I agree. I want to be able to evoke conversations through my storytelling and through the visuals. I think it's important to not just watch films. Yes, there are some for entertainment purposes, but I'm more of a dramatic, in-depth kind of person. I want to see the world be better. And for me, all of my films have been of stories that I've encountered, the people that I've encountered. The very first one was a woman that I would see in New Orleans just sleeping at a bus stop. And I said, people pass her all the time. I wonder if anyone has ever spoken to her or if anyone has had the privilege of giving her something. And I thought immediately, like, what does she do during the time of the month? You know, men have it easier to be living homeless on the street. And that is why I had written a short film called All for Honor. And it was about a woman and her daughter living in a car after her being unemployed. And she was just so fearful of what was going to happen to her daughter when she came on her menstrual. And she was doing whatever she could to not have her daughter live in this car. And this story came about because I would pass this woman at a bus stop every day going to work. And she would wander during the day, and at nighttime, right before sun was completely up, she would be gone. And I always thought, like, where is she taking care of herself? Mm-hmm. And so for me, the stories, I want people to be able to say, you know what, you're right. How can we help women on the street? How can we do this? How can we do that? It's important for me to tell stories that make people think after and want to help. And even for Run Crew, my first feature is about the youth on the street, how we don't take the time to find out why are they on the street. Because my mom, single parent, my dad died when I was 10 years old. And I didn't watch TV, you know, we made toys and stuff and spoke to dolls and all of that. But I'm very grateful for after school programs because I don't know where else I would be if I don't even know, it was free. My mother couldn't afford to bring us to places. I didn't have the luxury of just being able to have access to the things of the arts. So thank God for the schools. But again, going back to, I want to be able to leave a legacy where people will see my films and know that, oh, it's because of this film I am doing this. I've learned so much from this film, or I want to do something to help the community because what she has shown me has come to light, because not everyone knows everything, you know? And I am very passionate about the youth and about the elderly people. In between, I feel like you can fend for yourself, but I'm very, very passionate about helping the youth because this is why they're the adults, the messed up adults that we see. People didn't take the time out to have the conversation with them, to help them, to hone their skills. I mentor children all over. My next door neighbor, her daughter comes over here every Wednesday for 3 hours a day, just to give her mother a break. And I'm a ultra marathoner as well. And just the stories that I can tell her through my medals, she's all open. Like, oh, I want to run a race. I don't know what to do, but I want to run a race. And people don't realize that what you show a youth changes their game, changes the game for the rest of their life. So I'm with you, Chris. You know, it's important to be able to have that platform, but it's also to be able to shine the light, like Gilda was saying, shine the light the best way you can, not just one thing, but explaining why you are telling the story this way.
I feel that I'm 100% with you, because I think so much of our responsibility as artists and as creators is thinking about the impact that we're putting on our communities, right? Like, I don't know. In so many ways, I'm dumbfounded as to how I'm even still in this, because growing up, there wasn't representation for little boys like me, right? Like, I could not find myself on stage. I could not find myself on screen. And when I was, it was usually, some mustachioed man with a sombrero, and like he was either like in a gun battle, or he was like a thug, or, like all that very derogatory kind of stereotypical nonsense. And, I think Rodney and I had the very great fortune of growing up in a city like San Francisco, which is not to say in any way that, we live in some post-racial utopia, because that's just nonsense, right? But in the sense that when we grew up together and we were doing theater, I don't want to say that the color of our skin was less significant, but it wasn't this huge deal. Like, we were able to be on stage together and no one questioned it. And like, I think, we had that very fortunate opportunity, I guess, in so many ways. But as an adult, and once I was emerging into the field, I was like very rudely awakened to how that is not the norm in most places. And the thing that like really lit a fire under my ass was, I was in class one day, and I brought in, I think it was Something's Coming from West Side Story. And my teacher looked at me and she was like, "No, you're not going to work on this." And I was like, "Well, why not? Like, this comes from one of the greatest shows in the great American musical theater canon. Like, why wouldn't I work on this?" She's like, "Well, you'll never be a Tony. You'll be like a Chino or a Bernardo. So let's find something else for you." And I was just like, what? Like, this is my tuition. Like, I should be able to work on what I think is going to better me as an artist. Like, that's insane. And, this teacher, do I think she was racist? No. Do I think, at least in the sense, like, do I think she was intentionally racist and trying to cause harm? No, not really. I think she was just ignorant, and she was acting out of ignorance and didn't realize the impact she was having on a young artist, right? But from that moment forward, I said, that's not the world I'm trying to leave behind. I need to be able to create a space for other children who look like me, who look like my friends, and inspire them to want to continue pursuing this. Because at that moment, that would have easily shut me down. And it almost did. I almost stopped right there entirely, because I was like, what the hell am I doing here then? And, when I was going into college, this was the period, like, In the Heights had just come out. Hamilton wasn't even being discussed yet. So like, there wasn't representation for people who looked like me. Like, what was I supposed to do? And the option was either try to fit the mold that doesn't work for you, or go and carve out your space. Go carve out the space that you deserve, and that people that you care about deserve. And that's really, and then Rodney and I met back up in New York one fateful summer, and that's how we started the company of SF Backhoe, because we were like, no, it's important for us to tell our own stories from our perspectives, and that we're not just painted as these one-dimensional characters. We need people to see us for who we are and bring us to light. Like, but no one's going to do it for us. We're going to have to do it ourselves, which on one hand is really sad that, as young people, we had to, in, post millennia, we had to say, no, we're going to do it, because for whatever reason, there have been so many barriers, and no one has allowed voices like it, because it's not like we had some revolutionary idea. We know that people have had this idea and have been trying to do this, but we're still in 2021 screaming about, hello, our stories matter. Our stories matter, and you are going to listen to us. And, luckily, I feel like we're at a point where people are starting to go, oh, wait, what? And we're like, yes, thank you. Welcome to the party. Have yourself a drink. But, as frustrating as it is, like, I am inspired, because I want the kid who never thought that they would ever have a career on stage. So like, or that shouldn't even be a notion, right? That 9-year-old kid is like, oh, of course I'm going to do it. Of course I'm going to pursue it, because I have the talent. and the world deserves to see me on stage.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
go off.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Chris. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, just to go off of that and also go off of what Bridget said. Well, firstly, in the conversation about how people are now listening, people listen once every year. This is something I say all the time. Every single year that I've been alive, someone has gotten killed, and we go through what's now routine. Someone gets killed, we stand up, we protest, we get angry, we try to educate ourselves, we hashtag and we march, and then a few months go by and the conversation subsides until the next time someone gets killed and it's actually talked about. Because let's not act like one person or two people or three people a year this happens to. The people who break the news cycle. And then we kind of go back to normal. And Oscars So White and campaigns like that kind of go against the wayside and we forget about it. So I think what I want to do more than anything is sustain those conversations and sustain about who is, who isn't allowed, and also just do it honestly and maintain my integrity. Because we all know somebody or know of somebody who has been in this business and have lost their integrity because of it. Like they decided to go and they decided to do something because the paycheck was good, not because it fed their soul, because it fed their rent or fed their bills. Netflix can come to any of us next week and say, we're going to give you a few $1 million, but you have to play, like Marcella was saying, Thug Number 2 for the 50th time. Or you have to play Crackhead, or you have to play Pimp, or you have to, but we're going to give you the money and we're going to give you the exposure. It comes down to, what are you going to do? Are you going to stay true to to the stories that you committed to telling? Or are you going to say, well, I want a life in this business, so I'm going to do what I have to do? And it comes down to, I'm in this not because of that. I'm in this because I love it. I'm in this because I wake up and fall in love for a living every single day. But I got to help others because I'm not going to be here forever. None of us are. But someone's going to come after us. And they got to know, like Marcella was saying, that they can do it. And what I want people to do more than anything is walk out of one of my shows questioning themselves, questioning, what have I not been doing enough of? What haven't I been talking enough of? I had a reading like a week ago, and someone literally said, man, you had that scene in the middle, and it was just two Black guys talking about life. And I've never seen just two Black guys talk about life in a play, which they do exist, but this person was saying, I never saw that. And I was like, what? How? It's not because they don't exist. It's because, again, the powers that be haven't pushed them to the forefront, haven't waved them in our faces and made us pay attention to them. And, at the end of the day, that's a problem. And at the end of the day, I know that one day I'm going to, be the father of Black young people. And I want them to be able to look back at what I contributed to my chosen field and say, he might not have been rich. He might not have, won the Pulitzer, but he held his own and he made a way for himself. And he opened the path for other people to feel comfortable in their telling their own stories. So yeah.
Yeah, just following that, that absolutely resonates. And I've been thinking about your original, this question is a powerful question, Lemonade. And I appreciate how you worded it, because you asked two things. You asked, what we, how we want others to experience our experience and our art, and how what we also want to have, what our experience for self is as well. And I think for me, I really for me, there's something about my work and my art and my approach to it being a space for self-awareness and self-exploration, and by virtue of that, being a safe space. And when I say that, because I think that phrase has gotten diluted, I do not at all mean being comfortable. I think that when I say safe space, I mean the question of, if our inner selves, if our personal self, if this is all we got and everything else is sort of out of our control and we navigate that to the best of our ability, if I'm not safe for myself, where am I safe? If I'm not safe for myself, where else am I safe? It starts here. And so I feel like I'm dedicated to all of my artwork speaking to this idea that it is safe to know ourselves. It is safe to explore ourselves. It is safe to get to know ourselves better. For me, it's an imperative. For my communities, I feel like it is an imperative for us to know who we are, and how that looks is allowed. There's room, right? This is not scarcity. This is abundance. There's room. So there's room for my anger. There's room for my confusion. There's room for my curiosity. There's room for my audacity. There's room for my romance, all of these things. So that I don't know how, I honestly don't know what that road to success, for me, that is how I'm measuring my success. Like how am I going to sustain, an art quote career? That is my career. Is to speak to the humanity. Like that's what art does. It reflects humanity. And so for me, I'm really dedicated to this piece of self-awareness, as an invitation, right? Not as a, like, you must know yourself, you must know yourself in 5 days or else you're, no, I don't get to decide how a person knows themselves better. I am just setting up an environment where they will not be harmed by exploring themselves if they come in contact with my art. That's all I care about.
You said something so interesting about being safe, and this didn't even cross my mind until you said that. I've been a part of 3 Broadway shows, and I'm blessed to have that kind of a platform. But they always, normally Broadway shows, they tell a certain kind of story for a certain kind of person. Normally a certain kind of person is represented in them. But I was blessed to be in Motown the Musical and Ain't Too Proud. So I was telling Black people stories. I was like, I'm telling Black people stories. I'm still a machine, but I'm still like ingrained in this thing that I love. First one I was in was Book of Mormon, and it's very unique. It's a very cartoon South Park specific kind of stories. Not everyone's. I feel like I would have had a completely different experience if I was not within Black shows. Surrounded with Black casts, with Black creatives on this heightened of a platform kind of a thing. There's this like notion also from that premonition, like of trying to get somewhere, this goal of for the artist or for the actor of having this height or this goal, this like, I have to get to this thing. But what are you saying? What are you saying? You're like telling this, and I love Wicked. I grew up listening. I love Color Purple. I love these songs. Like sometimes I'm like, what are you? You're like, get up there. Like I'm fighting against my brother. I always had this thing in auditions, and I was good. I would get cast, but I'm like, my brother's here, and we're fighting for this thing to go and say, this white producer is shit stuff, and I was like, no. Something about it just didn't always had a, visceral, but that's what school was. That's what I was learned. That's the road. That's the path. That's where you are. You got to this point. You got a manager. It's time to go make the money, but I was like, wait, for who and what am I saying and why? And things just didn't always meet up. So I love in our company, Becco, we're out here and San Francisco's trying to be like, liberal, whatever. And it is. It's doing its thing. It's doing its thing. It's a little faux wanna be, where the Black people at? Where we at? Where the brown people at? We ain't. So we out here trying to like challenge the people who really call themselves really, allies. Well, let's really challenge it then. Let's really challenge it so that they leave with this, like, whatever kind of experience they can have. We want people to be present, and find, like someone was already saying, find more of themselves in that sacred space, the theater, which we call, we're really challenging, like these shows that like don't make you feel comfortable, and they shouldn't. And I felt like that was the difference between doing things that are like commercially done in New York, which can't always get a platform, when you're doing it like at home with your own space where you can tell it. But everybody go.
What about you, Gethsemane?
Gethsemane, yeah.
Oh, I think it's a really good question. For me, I realized when I was around 12, and I was reading this young adult series, that I was being given a huge gift when it came to literacy and narrative. I'm a survivor, and I was a childhood survivor. And I think I've struggled with a lot of things that many young childhood survivors struggle with. And I read this book that basically said, where these young people were talking to a friend who was also a survivor, and that friend had every question that I had. And the friend in the book there's like, this is not your fault. And this is why it's not your fault. And I really do believe that it saved my life, because I felt like the author was speaking to me directly. And it meant, I'm about to tear up, it meant the world to me, and it still means the world to me. In fact, when I got into college, I wrote the author, I sent her an email thanking her through her website, and she wrote me back. And like, I saved that email, like it's in my Google Drive. It's one of the most cherished things I have ever received in life. So now I think in terms of like what I want to do for others, or what I hope my art does, is that I hope I give a young person that same experience that I was given that day when I read that book. I hope that I can give you something that liberates you from any thought that what happened to you was your fault. It's not. And I think I also want to explore not fault, but like, what are the contributing factors that led this to happening?
Right.
Which also talk about systems of power and hierarchies of power. So how can we talk about sexism within Black communities and patriarchy within Black communities? They are just as destructive in my life as racism. How can we talk about Christian normativity? How can we talk about expanding horizons? How can we talk about homophobia and all these systems of power at play? And how can I, as a person who was incredibly privileged, I am a cisgender, college-educated woman who is also Black, who's also a woman, who is also a survivor. I have all this privilege, and I have all these things I'm finding again at the same time, every time simultaneously. So how can I break down those systems of power and ask people, like, you have inherited this. Does that mean you have to perpetuate it?
Right. How are we complicit sometimes? I love that.
Absolutely, 100%. Once again, to everything that everybody is saying. I think that as artists, it's definitely our duty to serve. And I really don't like that idea of like serving, but it's just to assist, like to give a helping hand and to guide our community into the light. And I just love that term of the light, because I feel like, we're constantly hidden in the dark, hidden in the shadows. Our stories don't get told in the way that they're meant to. So I want to thank everyone for sharing and just speaking so truthfully and honestly. Again, my heart is so full. It's been so full this entire weekend, and it just seems like every panel we get, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. But before we fully wrap, I do want to ask everyone what they're working on next.
Oh, I'll go. I don't have anything specific. I think I'm a little all over the place, and I'm in the process of refining that map. But I play harp, folk harp, and I didn't pick it up until I was a senior in high school. And it is one of my favorite things that I have come to out of all the instruments that I play. When I came into it, I didn't have a sense, nor did my parents. We didn't have a sense of what a costly undertaking it can be. I've never owned a quote good instrument in my life, you know, hand-me-downs and used things and things like that. And so the little harp that I had was from eBay. I've had a couple of other not so great harps since then, but it's not about the tool. You know, it's about the music that it can make. And so I've just at this time really trying to pull my the songs that I play and write on harp into the public eye. You know, there's every time that I've been able, you know, have had an opportunity to play it, even when I didn't know so much what I was doing in the early days, it really spoke, especially to the Black community, to see a young Black woman playing an instrument like that. And I know there are many of us, there are many Black women harpists, but I just am dedicated to not being so shy about sharing that work and not letting the barriers of what I faced early on in my early days keep me from the songs that want to be heard that way.
I'm writing my attempt at an epic. So when I was in high school, I went to a humanities-based high school, and I had to read a portion of the Bhagavad Gita, and I think I was in 9th grade. And I loved it. I thought it was incredible, and I thought that it was really humble in a way. It was like so much of this fascisms are unknowable, but this is what we think and this is what we're dreaming of. And then when I was in college, my last year in college, I studied abroad in India, and I picked up the Mahabharata there, and it was like so big. It was so big, and I was like, I'm intimidated. You know, but years have passed. I started reading Metamorphoses by Ovid, and I began to be like, oh, I can read epics. I really love this form. And I love that in the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita is often read separately, like I experienced it, but it's meant to be a part of this gigantic whole. So I'm trying to write a piece, an epic that is in 3 parts that are meant to be read together concurrently, but can be separated out of the Bhagavad Gita. And it's about what is it like to be a survivor? What is it like to find pleasure as an adult? As a survivor, what is it like for the perpetrator to come home from prison and have their freedom be threatened by somebody's naming what happened to them? So that's what I'm working
on. That sounds incredible, Gethsemane. I can't wait to read it.
Oh, it's hard. It's real hard. 5 pages at a time, girl, to think.
I'll be first in line. Who else? Is anyone working on anything that they want to plug?
Yeah, I just finished my first feature film, Run Crew. I filmed it during the pandemic last year, and we're in post-production right now. So while that's in post, I'm actually writing a new feature. I've done so many short films, and I just felt like last year, even though what we were going through, I just felt like that shouldn't prevent what I had set to do. So I was so proud of myself. And I think a lot of times people, they're not their biggest cheerleader. And I am my biggest cheerleader. Anybody knows I am big about celebrating my successes, celebrating everything that I do, because if you don't, who will?
That's right.
And so my next feature film, I'll be finished writing it maybe about May. I'm giving myself till May, and I will be filming it this year as well. I just, I congratulate you all on what you're doing and saying, and Gethsemane. I appreciate your honesty and bravery. One of the the film that I'm going to write next is about women's stories, and no shade to men, but women are the strongest creatures on this planet, and we hide it so well. And through our beauty, through our craft, through our emotions, we don't tell the stories verbally. We show a lot of our emotions, and that is what I want to be able to tell women's stories in my next feature film. And I don't want to go back to making short films. Like I've done short films for at least 6 or 7 years, and I feel like there's levels to it, and we stunt our own growth by feeling like we cannot do something, because there were a lot of people that told me, "Oh, I don't think you'll be able to do a feature film because of this, that." We had over 60 plus actors from the ages of 4 years old to 70, and we made it work. So again, it's about being living proof that things can be done, so someone else can see what you've done and feel encouraged and feel inspired to say that, oh, well, if she did it, I can do it too.
Right.
And so that's what I'm working on, and much success to everyone, whatever they're doing.
Yeah, right. Well, I just finished my first feature documentary since I've been down, and it's been accepted at over 12 film festivals, nationally and internationally. So it was top of the fest at Doc NYC, and Sundance followed it around, didn't accept it, but just like, oh, I got the best rejection letter ever. It pains me to tell you this, Gilda, but I won a social justice award. But more importantly, is that it's about transformative justice. I was on Angela Davis saw it, and she and I were on a panel together. She wanted to be with me talking about our film, but I think what it's like what people were saying earlier is that our films are out there, but I want to deal with transformative justice, not just restorative justice that hurt people. That's very important. But how are we going to change laws and policies and how we move in this world? And so with my film, our film, we have an impact campaign. So we're lobbying in the legislature about drive-by shootings and things of that nature, more investment in poor and gentrified communities, particularly, black and brown communities, those kinds of things. So we are looking at those things. But I'm also, since the film is over, now we got a sales agent, now it's the distribution thing, and that's a lot, but I really want to show it in prisons, particularly, so but with the pandemic it's difficult. But I'm also working on this other, I want to move from, just like you said, Bridget, you want to move from shorts. I want to move from documentary to drama, right? And so, but I love documentaries, so I'm working on a docudrama, with this particular question: what is the fundamental flaws of civilization? And moving from that, where there's a story and then there's documentary in there too. But I don't like talking heads documentaries, so it'll be something very different. And in the meantime, I'm working with these two other documentary filmmakers to deal with the, there's this movement that has been going on particularly in the United States and internationally, that really is pulling down critical race theory and those kinds of things. And so the Proud Boys and other folks who are intellectuals and folks organizing in the streets. And so we're doing like an expose documentary on that. But my main thing, I want to do this docudrama that's still being written in my head. And I just want to say that all of you all give me hope. And I want to thank you all so much, because you've put so much on my mind. And I particularly want to thank you, Lebanese. Your questions were so insightful. For you to get, filmmakers, playwrights, all kinds of performing artists together, and I dare say intergenerationally, only because I'm there, right? that makes that you know, makes my heart sing. So I want to thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Aunt Gilda. And and it's my whole organization. It's not just me. So thank you very much. Who's next? Who has something else they want to tell us that they're working on? I think it's Chris, Rodney, and Marcelo that have to speak.
I'll go. The next kind of thing that's happening is I have a show that's having a production at the end of this month or the beginning of April. I'm not exactly sure. Entitled "The Preacher Man," and it has to deal with those things I was talking about earlier, abuse in regards to young men of color. In the play having to do with a religious institution. So I'm just ready for people to get mad at me. And then I have a play entitled "The Addict's Love Letter to His Prayer Book," being developed by the Road Theater in Los Angeles. And another theater in California, Theater of Note, is workshopping my play entitled "Between Dog and Wolf," which has to do with the reunion between 3 people who survived a school shooting, and kind of discusses how for a lot of the school shootings that we see on TV, most of the attention goes to the white survivors of those shootings. Rarely in the interviewing and everything in the speeches are the young Black voices represented. And so that's kind of what the play is examining, kind of if it's a school shooting at a majority Black and Hispanic school, do they call it a school shooting, or do they say, well, the school's in the inner city, that's what you expect or something? And just kind of examining that. And I have a play entitled "The Theory of XY," which is being developed and will be produced by a theater in New York called Italia Theater, which is an all-immigrant, all-female founded and led theater company. And what that play talks about is survivors, but survivors who are not in this country legally, and how do they report their crimes, and how do they find justice when they can't, when they're afraid of exposing their status. And it's based on, interviews with the women who own the theater company, and it also examines the complexities between being an immigrant and being an African American, because both, or just a person of color in general, from America, because both feel out of place in this country. And then my play that happened in Jefferson Square, which has to do with a Black police officer's complicity in the death of his cousin, is going to be performed in a few months by a theater company called Derby City Playwrights. It'll kind of receive its first public reading. So yeah, I'm tired.
You a busy man. Damn.
He's out here.
Yeah, successful busy man.
Right. I was thinking about how spent I've been this month. Like, it's hard to be a Black man in the arts during February.
Oh Lord, Black History Month. Lord have mercy.
They used me up. I'm spent. I need a whole 11 months off. Don't you call my name?
You're right. Call me in March.
Right. Yeah. Me and Marcelo, our company, SF Bacco, the San Francisco Bay Area Theater Company, we pivoted last year to do some online things on the platform Twitch. And we do these, our show is called Live with Rod and Mars, for short for our names, on the first Thursday of every month. And it's a virtual variety act. We have musical performances. We have some spoken word. We have some dances. We have, that's a lot of fun. It's a lot of hosting, some comedy in there. It's a lot of artists of color, obviously. It reflects our community. So that's every Thursday at 6 on the first, every first Thursday. The second Thursday, we do a thing called Hella Theater, where it's really our virtual podcast. We bring on guest artists from our community who talk about different things. We've had on both Idris Alcamore and Rodessa Jones here talk about cultural equity. We've had on an Asian American theater maker here who works at American Conservatory talk about, he's a director, they're directing, and what that's like for a person of color to be, or an Asian man to be the director of a certain production. So we do those on our second Thursdays, and on our third Thursdays, we do a thing that we call Play Day, where we literally just pick a play and we go on Zoom and we just read it. So it's kind of like you know how you have an audiobook? We just pick a play and we're all cold. Like we just pick a whole bunch of actors. We just pick it. And like last week we read Irvin Squire's Obamaology. None of us had read it before. And we just read it. It was dope. And we have a discussion about it. And that's what we do for our Twitch programming. Also, Marcelo, what else we got going on?
Well, a little bit later this year, we are developing an outdoor theater festival. It originally was not supposed to be outdoor, but the pandemic happened. So we find opportunity in the challenge, but we're starting a new festival called the New Roots Theater Festival, where it's a multicultural festival where we amplify artists from our community that, it started, Rodney saw a Facebook post of a director here in the Bay Area. And I mean, let's be blunt about it. He was a white male director and he said, "Where are all the companies of color? I don't know of any of them. Do they even exist?" And Rodney was like, "Wow, hi, we're here. And there are many of us." So we started this festival. It's going to be amazing. We're hoping for October, hoping everyone stays safe and healthy enough for us to get back to be able to tell these stories. If you're interested, even if you're not in the Bay Area, we're going to have some digital aspect to it. So keep in touch. You can find us at sf.co.org for San Francisco Bay Area Theater Company. And I'm so excited. We're focusing really on the aspects of joy and finding the joy in our storytelling. Obviously, trauma is deeply ingrained in a lot of our communities, but we don't want our stories and our narratives to keep focusing on just that one aspect. Yes, that is an important part of it for sure, but we are so many things, right? And joy and our experiences have a lot to do with who we are as artists as well. And we want people to see that too.
We also just want to highlight the process because people like us don't always get time to do their stuff like everybody else. So we really want to make this a machine, a process where people who look like us can feel like their art has a path. There ain't always a path for us. So we're trying to make something new out here, y'all. We're trying. So keep on the lookout for us to see if it works.
I'm just looking forward to literally everybody's projects, and I want everyone to follow all of these incredible artists. I want to say thank you so much for feeding my soul personally today. I want to say thank you for feeding our communities. You're all so inspirational. I mean, I feel like I have so much joy, so much more movement and motivation to be an artist because of this conversation today. So I just want to thank you all so much. So a couple things for everybody. One, we're going to watch a trailer for Gilda's film, Since I've Been Down. And then I want to remind everyone that we are going to be speaking with Ekwa Masangi, the director of Farewell Amour, at 4 p.m., right? It's 3:35 right now in New York. Okay, great. So we'll be seeing everyone in that time. I want to say thank you again to all of our lovely guests. You are all amazing, incredible, brilliant people. Please follow them if you're not following them already. And thank you. Thank you, everybody.
And this is a draft trailer. It's not the final trailer. So there you go. Little caveat there. I will put my website here. Okay.
Looking back now, I'm able to see everything that happened. I wasn't able to see it then, so I wasn't able to avoid the traps that were set for me. A lot of us weren't.
All my friends is either in prison now, forever, or dead.
A lot of our children are in the streets suffering mentally. And when they make mistakes, they're being punished without being offered any alternatives.
We socialize to believe that prison and death is a normality.
It's easy for us to sit here and say, well, you could have done something different. Could they?
The reason why we still have gangs and drugs and violence and dysfunctional communities, because the underlying issues haven't changed.
There are many of us who do not believe that people who are in prison can have the answers to our problems. We do not believe that the people sleeping under the bridge can have the answers to their reality.
I'm pretty sure they still doubting us all the way up to this point. But you can't argue with our results. That's the thing that you can't argue with. Cameras in every classroom. Not only put a camera up in here, you can come and sit in our classroom and you can learn too.